Welcome to the Parody, where we tally up the victims in all our favorite movies. I'm Justin Natalie Rose, and today we're looking at Roblox Titanic Reimagined, released by Mr. Apple in 2023. Titanic Reimagined is basically a retelling of, the Titanic disaster that happened all the way back in 1912. This isn't even the first Roblox retelling of the Titanic events, as iCharles27 also made one. The reason I'm doing this one is because it's a more full movie, lasting 100 minutes, and also because I was also requested to do it by Mr. Apple themselves. And that's very cool of the filmmakers of these films for approaching me to cover their work, even if the request was in the comments. Titanic Reimagined was announced on Mr. Apple's community page about 3 months ago. And it's very shocking to imagine that this could have been done in just about 3 to 4 months. And thankfully, I don't think it falls into any of the traps that Titanic 1997 may have fallen through. Unlike that multi-billion-dollar movie, this doesn't fall into any romantic stuff, so we can already appreciate it in that department. It's unlikely that any romance may have actually occurred on the Titanic to begin with, so hey, that's nice. There's also no sex. So I'm very excited to go into this one. I even tried covering iCharles27's one and didn't even get past that one scene where all the bodies are stuck in the water. So with all that being said, let's finally get into this. How many people died in one of the most popular disasters to be retold, record-breaking or not? Let's find out and get to the kills. The movie begins with the British people saying goodbye to the Titanic's passengers. It's where the opening credits take place, and all of these people are going to the United States, hopefully to have a prosperous future. In real life, the Titanic actually had a purpose. It was to send them to Ellis Island, an island in New York and New Jersey, which was used back then to get foreign immigrants into the United States, particularly New York City. Looking at pictures just from Wikipedia, it probably did not have the best of conditions, but for the 1900s, I bet it was the best option the United States could have had. As the camera goes underwater from the Titanic, we switch to colored shots in the Titanic. We cut to the present day, where a submarine is heading towards the ruins of a ship in the Atlantic Ocean. This submarine's just down here to explore and study this sunken ship. This ship, of course, is the sunken Titanic, which had sank in April of 1912. The guy looking out the window of the submarine is named Jason, and he's asking his friend named Mitch in order to see if he can get all of this. I did not see that weird time between this and Time Heroes happening, but hey, Jason has a story to tell. It was April 10th, 1912 when she departed, and it was April 15th that she plunged, so Mitch, how about you shut your mouth and let him speak. We cut all the way back to 1912 where everyone's saying goodbye to the Brits leaving on the Titanic. There's even people coming from ancient automobiles. And some people, like this girl, are not as happy to get on the trip as others are. In the driver's part of the boat, a guy named Charles is telling the captain that they're all ready to go. So now all 2,000 people on the Titanic can leave Britain and head towards the United States. Goodbye, low-quality torso guys. Some of the faces we'll be meeting on the Titanic are Lewis and his mother, Hayes. When they go to her room, Lewis says that it's way better than their old home, when in actuality, well, it's just a pile of 2 bunk beds. On another part of the boat, there are some gentlemen, like this guy named William, who's probably not like any kids out of pizzerias. He has some very gentlemanly friends such as Glenn. Nathan here might as well just be the richest of them all, as he owns a coal mine just outside of California. Glenn's profession is doing teaching at Fort Worth High. He may have mistaken it for a different school, but he says the school is abandoned and his job was there too. The sad kid named Maxine finds a secret little room inside the Titanic. That's it? Just a random door? Well, in any case, she should probably break down into that door and find another room in the Titanic. Before we can find out what it is, we get shots of badly animated water. Apparently this means it's time for the Titanic to get into its all-ahead full time. This also perfectly encapsulates the working areas of the Titanic with some weird-looking machinery. As Maxine pays a little homage, Frederick says that it's time to stoke her right up. And that would also mean it's time for the Titanic to go into full force. The jolly times on the Titanic are interrupted by more submarine adventures in the present day. Jason asks Mitch if he's getting this all on camera, and Mitch says yes, even with full surround sound. He then continues about a woman named Margaret Brown, who had struck a gold mine off of California. If this is her right here, then she was dressed up in some very delicate clothing. We get introduced to even more characters, Raymond and Felix. A transition into a bedroom on the Titanic. Felix's mother right there is a woman named Lucille. There's something very valuable in this room, something that's worth up to $17 million in today's money. Felix will be in control of $17 million in some few years. Lewis has a girl named Lynette in his room, telling him about her story at Fordwick High. Apparently, Gentleman Glenn got the school burned down in a science accident. That story about Glenn's accidental arson reminds Hayes about her husband. He had moved to teaching science after teaching English, but one day he just mysteriously disappeared. After getting permission from his mother, Lewis freely explores the Titanic. Benny Spinny! Apparently, Lewis has been gone for too long, even though it's already been just a minute. So Hayes has to go look for him. In doing so, she accidentally bumps into a random passenger, who she gets some very valuable info from. Lewis is apparently behind this very large block of free people. Hazel warns Lewis that he's still gonna get grounded for going up the deck. When Lynette was 9, Lewis's age, she used to wander around a lot, but that didn't always end up well for her. She had gotten lost in a crowd once, so she couldn't be able to find her father. Lynette then leaves. Maxine then takes the spot and explains that she's going to America to look for her brother because of some stuff that had happened with her brother in the past. Heads up for some abuse stuff. If you don't want to see that, go to this timestamp. Her mother tells her not to interfere with anything that's going on, as if she wanted this, and although she tells her to stop even further, she says she'll get the treatment too. And then eventually she tells her brother, Sonny, to get out of the house. She explains to her mom that she didn't have to do all that, and just because he has canners doesn't mean he's not a part of her family. But her mom just ignores all of that, because she just has 2 seconds to walk back into the house. She says again that she's just looking for her brother who had fled to America after all of this. The date then cuts to April 10th. Lynette and Glenn have run into each other, with Lynette saying that Glenn was her professor back in high school and that it wasn't his fault for that school fire that happened back then. Lynette's going to New York to hopefully get a job there, and that the college thing didn't really work out for her. Lynette tells Glenn that one day with the school, that not everyone hates him from that, even though he thinks the opposite of that. Because in that fire, 2 kids had burned to death. The point Lynette is trying to make here is that if you keep worrying about the past, it'll blind your future decisions. There are 2 very gentlemen named Edward and Bruce, who are hanging around in the D-deck, with Bruce picturing that when they step foot into America, they could dominate the headlines. Bruce Wayne origin story! Inside other places in the Titanic, some people are getting their moves in like a Mario mix. Henry asks Hayes if she's gonna drink all that since she's a woman! And she just says, "Watch this. Die, bitch." Lynette gets up on stage and starts dancing erratically with the gentleman up there. Other people start performing their own TikTok-like dance moves. After walking to what seems to be his quarters on the Titanic, Glenn appears to notice something. It's a photo of him and Hayes. His line afterwards suggests that they were together at one point, and that he was possibly the husband that she had left. And it just so happens this photo of him and Hayes was also used on the newspaper, confirming that 2 people had in fact died. I will now count the 2 kids in the Fordwick High fire for 2 reasons. 1, it's pivotal to the plot, at least in this first part, and 2, this newspaper is confirmation that it happened. We didn't actually see it happen on screen, but I'm gonna count them for these 2 reasons. And also, we rarely get our first kills this far into the episode, so hey. Eventually, it is now April 14th, the day that the Titanic had sunk. And the guy named John tells the captain that there have been at least 6 ice warnings by the Californian. Raymond and Lucille have some plans. They're gonna sell that sculpture in America. Finally, Raymond can yell, "I'm rich." Raymond and Lucille then discuss their backstories and their plans for America. Golf courses, forests, China. Down in other parts of the ship, Maxine is exploring, but it's too late. She's been ratted out by this random woman. Mr. Quartermaster explains to Maxine that sneaking on the ship is a crime. Raymond then proceeds to ask Felix how it was back at the cabin, and Felix responds with, "Well, sir, it was quite great." As the night of April 14th closes in, Glenn's looking out at the front of the ship. Hayes has run up to Glenn, and Glenn says, "You sound familiar." And then he realizes the truth. He was actually with Hayes in the past, confirming my suspicions. "I have a fucking son?" The quartermaster then continues to interrogate Maxine. "What is someone like you sneaking on a ladder like this doing?" After explaining to the quartermaster that she's poor and looking for a brother in America, the quartermaster leaves, still somehow refusing to let Maxine out. We cut back to the submarine for a short bit, just telling us that the Titanic disaster is about to begin. Edward says that the water's looking pretty calm and that shortly he'll be heading back to his sleeping quarters. We cut to our fifth gentlemanly gentleman email saying that was a very nice course, perhaps the finest I've ever had. We then get Lucille's desperate attempts. Emil says he's from Eisenbrid. Glenn's mind is still exploded after figuring out that Hayes and him are still on the same ship. We cut up to a guy named Frederick saying that some real stuff is going down there, eh? Then they see real terror. An iceberg right ahead. Frederick cuts down to a guy below just to say the famous line. William says more famous lines as we switch pan over to this guy and a steering wheel. Everyone on the ship is doing mighty well and fine in some mighty fine work, just so they can make sure the Titanic doesn't crash into the iceberg. True panic is being instilled all over the ship, with all the dampers being shut. But the iceberg has more luck here, as it crashes into the Titanic. Let my mental breakdown begin. In the dampers, there's already been a drowning. They're working on shutting down all the doors down there, but for one faithful guy, it's a little bit too late, as he decides to duck into it and it just crushes him. I'm glad they kept the shot in. The main damper room guy gets out of there in time, but for one guy, the water catches up to him faster than he could get into that closing door. As another captain guy says hard to port, Elijah asks a question. Lewis is still in the cabin, right? Meanwhile, on another part of the ship, William decides to tell everyone to note the time. Another guy named Thomas says that the water is 14 feet above the keel in just 10 minutes. Thomas then notes that that's 5 compartments, although the Titanic can stay afloat with the first 4. He then tells everyone that it's a mathematical certainty that the Titanic will founder. But with the pumps, Thomas tells everyone that the ship can stay afloat for an hour or 2. Gordon Ramsay 1912 tells everybody to get up and get their lifebelts on at once. After figuring everything out, our main characters are in a panic. She then tells Lynette that the ship is sinking and then asks her if she's seen Lewis anywhere. Thankfully, Lewis is okay, he's just in a big crowd. But tragedy happens, as Lewis gets pushed down a massive pile of stairs. They seem to go on forever until he finally reaches the end. At that point, people trample over him. And with all of this, Lewis has died from trampling and falling down a huge flight of stairs. Charles has to figure out if the women and children have gotten in the boats, and Edward says yes. Vanessa, their maid, who's just got introduced, knocks on their doors just so Lucille can get confused about all the commotion outside. Vanessa has to explain that they're all going up deck. But don't worry, it's just a precaution. Up at the lifeboats, Charles still mandates that there should only be women and children. John says that the Californian won't ever respond, ever, and when Edward asks if any other ships have responded, John comes in with the Carpathia, which will be here in 4 hours. Then Hayes has to make the unfortunate discovery that her son is dead. Emails request that he should be let onto the lifeboats with his wife, and Charles is disgusted. As this happens, the first lifeboat is able to be lowered down into the water. Although at first, it was a bit difficult. Hayes, Elijah, and Lynette are stuck when some water comes into her part of the ship. Hey camera operator, maybe just swing the camera around a bit and get some good direction in for this film, that would be great. Water, however, is still flooding in, which means they'll have to swim out of here. They almost get help from a steward on the ship, but he chickens out. So then, while underwater, mind you, they'll have to push on the door in order to escape. Evacuation on the Titanic is still going as planned. Fireworks. Somewhere else on the ship, yet again, the water is still rising into certain parts. Maxine, who's still stuck in that police guy's room, sees a hallucination of her lost brother. Damn, what a way to be cold. Actually, no, it's not a hallucination. This is actually him. He didn't go to America. But a whole decade of his life was ruined by Maxine. So what, is he just gonna leave her drowning in here? That sucks. Lucille then tells Raymond that she can't go outside the ship. She really isn't sure about anything that's going on there, so she cannot get on a boat. Hayes has to tell Elijah that, well, the Titanic might be sinking, and there's a building panic, so they need to get on a lifeboat, even though there's not much boats left at the point. Hayes then turns into a dumbass horror movie character. Elijah decides that he's gonna go starboard, and Hayes is gonna go to the port. While waving a gun, Charles tells everybody to get back from the lifeboat. Some people almost make it onto the lifeboats, but this woman falls off the Titanic and falls into the water, drowning, and another guy does that too. In order to cut everything, Frederick has to tell everyone to stop lowering all the lifeboats. This other woman tries to make it onto a lifeboat, but they just fall into the water and drown like those other two idiots, much to Jake Paul's shock. Hayes and Lynette walk to a lifeboat spawn area and just see a singular life jacket. A debate ensues when Lynette and Hayes go back at each other saying that, hey, you should have that life jacket. Lynette says that she can legally drink, so Hayes says that they should find more lifeboats. At this point, the entire D-deck has flooded. Yay, evacuation. As they row the boat, I can see 5 more idiots in the background jumping off the Titanic. I believe they're drowning too, so hey, what the hell, just let me have this. Edward then tells everyone to come back to the ship. After Edward says that, I can count 4 more kills as 4 more people jump off the lifeboat, eventually drowning. Elijah runs into Raymond, and Raymond has to give Elijah a deal. Could you help me find my sculpture? And he'll split some of the earnings with him. Elijah and Raymond then go down to the sea deck to find the sculpture. We have some danger in here though, as their room is currently flooding from all over. Felix then interrupts the entire situation as the Titanic starts to flood more and more. Felix then gets ragdolled by a door, so they have to go help him. Raymond decides that it's not worth risking it to get the sculpture, so they're gonna have to go. Everyone then splits up with good lucks. 2 more people then jump from the Titanic and eventually drown. Raymond then has to relay the news back to Lucille, although she doesn't really care. They just have to get off the boat already. Lucille and Felix then proceed to get on one of the lifeboats. Sadly, Raymond cannot get on, separating him and Lucille. However, for whatever reason, Elijah could get on the lifeboat. William has a strange look on his face as he tells them to lower away. Even worse, he's disgusted by water going up. Look at this person falling. William is currently commanding everyone on the ship to stay back from him. If anyone tries getting past him, he's gonna start shooting. Since he said that, I don't think anyone's gonna get that idea. Wow, okay. It appears that Henry and another extra have been shot by William. William then realizes that he's just caused the deaths of 2 people. And it was for the protection of what? These officers? And in a final homage to the 1997 film, he shoots himself in the face. To pay homage to the ship, some guy starts playing the violin. Here I'll add 4 more deaths. Raymond, 2 people stuck in a room, and Maxine, who's been confirmed to drown. Back near the front of the ship, we can see 1 guy just fall off a rope. As of now, the sea deck is entirely flooding with many of people inside of it. However, I think these fancy gentlemen managed to make it out alive. Alright, so here's the deal. We're gonna make a new boat for all the crew members, and if you're not a crew member, you're about to die. I don't think Edward's gonna get that lucky, considering that his entire room has just been flooded, so now he's dead. Right now, the Titanic is seriously on its very last legs. And so, Hayes and Lynette run off. Alright, now it's time to get into the sea deck, which doesn't look all that great, I'd say. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to count 12 people who make their way into or were already in the sea deck. Since, look, the sea deck's getting pretty flooded, and I think the fancy gentleman only has a chance of surviving, which I think he does. Now the entire ship is basically screwed, with parts coming off of it faster than ever before. However, more people are not lucky, as 6 of them get crushed by a cylinder engine. Include these 2 lifeboat losers. Furniture inside rooms of the Titanic are starting to move lower and lower, as more people walk up. Here are our first fallers, and I'm gonna count 5 of them. I think that's how many there are in this specific shot. Oh, and on the topic of falling, I'm going to count 10 more people who decide they want to die from all of this. Even doors are being propelled forward by water. And after that, I'm going to count 6 more fallers who fall off the Titanic all this way, because, yeah, they're pretty screwed. To give ourselves a break, we get a shot of Elijah as he sees one of the other cylinder engines falling into the water, burning. Welcome back to Fall Town. So, Vanessa, do you want to join 9 more people in falling off the Titanic in multiple silly ways? You know what? Let's use another later shot. Round them all up together. Bam! This is a pretty gnarly scene, right? In this one shot alone, there are 86 water corpses. So I was thinking, I saw 22 other deaths happening here, so what if we just lumped all of this together and count 108 more people as the Titanic eventually sinks? I mean, sure, the numbers are inflated, but hey, y'all like those big kill numbers? A kill I'll keep separate from all of this is the steward, who gets kicked off the ship by Lynette. Fucking whoops. So here we have it. Hayes and Lynette have successfully made it to the top of the Titanic. Well, Lynette's gotten in an unlucky situation. Her arms got stuck. But when Hayes says she'll pull her out, she just says that they don't have enough time. And eventually, the Atlantic and the Titanic start making out. That means Hayes has Sarah as Lynette drowns when the Titanic sinks to the very bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. We see that sweeping shot of bodies I mentioned earlier, and Hayes in the middle of all of it, somehow remaining alive. And Lucille is sad because Raymond died because of his statue. A bit later, the Carpathia has rescued everyone who just died on the Titanic. However, Elijah has to end the movie with something Lynette had once told him. If you keep worrying about the past, it will blind your future decisions. So, this is his lesson. We have to accept what life throws at us. So, Mitch, that's how the Titanic sank. It was because of an iceberg that was just flowing through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that just so happened to coincide with the Titanic's path. But here's one thing I need to get to. The numbers. So, Mitch, will you let me get to the numbers? Great. Through many methods of counting, I counted 190 kills in Roblox Titanic Reimagined. Funnily enough, that's the same as CB's admin experience. That kill count was all the way back in 2021. The victims consisted of 40 men, 33 women, and 117 unknowns, giving us a pie chart that kind of looks like this. Oh, look at all that metal. I think that was used in the Titanic. With a runtime of 104 minutes, that left us with a kill on average every 32.84 seconds. There's gonna be no credits for today's episode, no awards, and I just want to get straight to some scheduling announcements. Number 1. The only reason I could get this episode out when I did was because of a little break in grounding. But other than that, yeah, that's it. You're not getting any more episodes until like late May or something, early June. So, yeah, there's all of that stuff. The kill count when I return will be the fabled recount for Time Heroes. So, yeah, that one's supposed to be like an hour and 30 minutes or so. So, get prepared for that one. And, I'll leave some special thanks down in the bottom right corner. Thanks for watching.